Hey everyone, this is Max and Maxi TCG. Thank you for joining me in another video. So in this video, we're going over the Fire King Structure Deck series, and we're covering the deck analysis section. So in the last video, we covered the deck basics, where we more covered the individual cards, how the different engines work, thinking about them more from understanding the cards themselves. So when you get to the deck analysis, you actually know how the cards work, and if you understand those cards, you probably skip to this section. So what we're going to do in this video is go through all the different decks, explain the kind of structure and thought process behind the deck, how the different engines work in terms of the deck structure, and then we'll jump more into the combo video in the next section. So this is going to be the deck analysis for the Dogmatika cards. So there is a few changes from these from the initial deck run through. I wanted to make the deck a little bit more consistent, but added in Pot of Prosperities. If you ever want to find the upgraded and more recent versions of the deck, check my website. That's where I'll have an image for the deck and the cards in it that you could find there in case there are any changes from past YouTube videos or format changes. For the Dogmatika version, you automatically get more starters than you do with the just structure deck version, which is great. Again, we went through all of the card roll stuff in the first video for the structure deck, since more of the beginner players that are starting will need to understand that. So if you're skipping around and you don't understand how card rolls work, check that section out in the first video. When it comes to starters, we have about 10 starters here. We have Ponix, Dear Servant, which can get you to Ponix, 1/1, which can get you to Ponix, and Pot of Prosperity, which can get you to any of these starters to be able to get to Ponix. That's pretty much the whole deck for this revolves around Ponix for this version. Now, Pot of Prosperity does have some confliction, because part of the Dear Servant aspect of the deck is sending Garua to be able to draw a card, banish it off Maximus, to be able to summon Maximus, and then Maximus can send the Shureg and the Titaniclad to be able to search Fleur-de-Lis for the Titaniclad, and for the Shureg to be able to search the Ponix since you banished the Garua. Again, that's kind of the basic idea of the combo, allowing you to get to your Ponix line. Problem with Pot of Prosperity is after you use it, you cannot draw cards by effects the turn you activate this card. So even if you Pot of Prosperity for Nadir Servant, you can still do the combo. You just can't draw off Garua. But due to the deck's lack of consistency, I think you do need to play a card like this. And luckily, due to the reprint, it's only a $3 to $4 card, where it used to be a $30 card to a $100+ card at one point. So it's significantly cheaper than it was. A lot of decks I've seen online are just generally sticking to the 7 cards as their starters, but I do think the Pot of Prosperities are a very useful way of increasing the consistency. And yes, you do lose the draw off the Garua, but it's better than not being able to play since you don't draw enough cards. Since we have more starter cards that could be really good, we can cut down on some of the extenders. So again, we don't necessarily need 3 Fire King Sanctuary, we can use 2, and 2 Fire King Island, more of an optimal ratio. Some decks might even cut this down to 1 when you get to the Sinful Spoils versions of the deck. We have 2 Tenki, just a way to kind of get to any of your cards here. Again, not as good in formats where Droll might be main decked, so you might want to focus on more of the cards you're actually trying to draw versus search. It's kind of something to consider, but a way to kind of have versatility to get any of the cards you need out of these 3 based off what you need in that situation. 3 Kieran, again, pretty standard number in most decks, just a really good extender, and probably one of the best additional extenders in the deck. Garunix, again, I think a 2 of in most decks. I think 3 gets a little cloggy, but you need it, unfortunately, with the structure deck version. 2 is nice. You can cut down to 1, but then you do risk it being banished from the graveyard and having no other way to recur it from cards like Droll and Lockbird. So I would consider probably playing 2, especially if you think Droll or other graveyard banished cards are going to be in the format. Again, we have Arvata, Effect Negate, Spell Negate, Monster Search, Brung. We have the Dogmatika cards, Dogmatika Maximus. Then you have Fleur-de-Lis, good additional extender that also can give you a negate, and also a pretty big body on the board for beating your opponent down. Again, Circle the Fire King for targeting effect negation, kind of dodging, and then also OT King, Skyburn, being able to destroy cards your opponent controls, so dodging target effect negation going second. Then you have our hand traps here, so this is kind of the upgraded version we talked about for upgrading the structure deck, Imperm, Ash, Effect Veiler, and Nibiru. Now, in terms of upgrading, one thing you might want to consider is the playability of Ash Blossom post Phantom Nightmare. Because one thing you got to consider, which is kind of crazy, is that Ash Blossom in some ways is really good in X format, because the fire decks can recur Ash Blossom with Sunlight Wolf, which is a great resource to be able to have a recursible hand trap you can keep using. But due to Princess coming out in Phantom Nightmare being a really good card for fire decks, any player that is able to get 2 monsters onto the field after being Ash Blossom can go into Hita, steal your Ash Blossom, and then go into Princess to keep extending and making plays. From there, they can go into Ambler Whale, which then gives them a target to keep making plays when you're on your turn when you special summon a monster. So Ash Blossom kind of is a really weird kind of position in the format, where again being good because it's recursiveness, Sunlight Wolf, and generally a very solid, versatile kind of low impact hand trap, but you can get really punished if they're just able to get 2 monsters on the field, which most decks can do. So kind of a weird spot here with if Ash Blossom is good. I think still played, but I think you have to be very weary about when you use it. I'd probably try to use this as more of one of my last hand traps, so they can't extend into the Hita early on. And then Effect Failure, just good targeting effect negation. Not as good as Imperm generally, but still a decent card. And pairs really well when you have a Nibiru and an Impermanence, or a Nibiru and Effect Failure. Even if they summon a card to negate the Nibiru, you could still then negate that card to board wipe them. And I think Nibiru will be a great card next format, with most decks playing into it, especially if you draw a 2-card combo with, again, Effect Failure Nibiru, Infinite Impermanence Nibiru. For the extra deck, we start fleshing it out with newer cards. Garunix from the structure deck, but then we get a Zeus. To get a reprint in the starter deck, or the 2-player starter deck, you can easily pick this up for $20. Probably lowering the price was, I think, like $12 to $15 before. So another way to be able to get Zeus. Almirage, a really good way to be able to link off any of your normal monsters that are under 1,000 attack into an Almirage, which is a good way to get a fire onto the field. Linkribo, another way to be able to link off Onyx, can be good in a grindy situation, because in later turns, if they ever try to negate Onyx, you can tribute it with Linkribo to get a body on the field and remove the Onyx from the field so it doesn't get negated. Hita, card again for just extending into further plays. IP Masquerena, a great way of making a disruption on the opponent's turn, also giving the monster it summons card destruction immunity. Sunlight Wolf, great recursion card for being able to recur resources like Kirin or Ash Blossom to your hand, or any other Fire King, but these will probably be the 2 cards you're trying to look for. Heat Soul, decent play that you can go into if you don't feel like you have a good line and you want to draw into hand traps. And this works well again with any 2 cybers of different attributes. So you have, IP Masquerena and Almirage, 2 cybers, Linkribo, and Sunlight Wolf, again 2 different cybers attribute types that you can pair together. Goddess, I really like playing Goddess as a target for IP, also a good card for outing unaffected boss monsters, and it's nice to have it in the extra deck so you don't have to draw into it. So as long as your board can summon a lot of monsters, which this deck's pretty decent at extending onto the field, can be a good card to consider playing out really annoying monsters that your opponent might play, like Pearly, Ex-Pearly Noir, or Catagnister monster, any deck that summons kind of a Towers type monster that can't be affected or targeted for that. And then we kind of have our Dogmatika targets for the deck. We have Shureg, Aggregator, Long, Entis, Garua, and Titaniclad. Again, the main ones you need for the combo is Shureg, Garua, and Titaniclad. Extra cards that are nice to have are like, Aggregator, a targeted effect negation on the field. This is a targeting bounce, a targeting destruction. So other useful cards that can be really good. Now, a card that you can play in the Dogmatika deck, a good board breaker potentially, is the Ultimate Slayer. This works really well in a Dogmatika deck because this card functions off being able to have cards in your extra deck that are worth summoning that hit multiple types of cards: Fusion, Synchro, Exceed, Pendulum, and Link. Pretty much good against any card if you have the cards to be able to benefit from it. Now, if you were to play this card, I would try to probably fit a Tri-Brigade Bucephalus II into the deck. It is very helpful for being able to send Garua and give you a link target. So that's something I would make sure I would add. You could probably, for that, maybe you cut Zeus because you might not go into it that much. So there are some different options. I'd probably cut Goddess for the Bucephalus, especially if I were to go for the Ultimate Slayer route. But a really good card that allows you to be able to remove an opponent's monster on the field, and they can't respond with monster effects. So a good way to out different cards. I don't know how great it's going to be post Phantom Nightmare, but I still think worst case situation, if you can out a Link monster, you'll get to remove that monster from the field and draw a card. So I don't think it's going to be bad. A lot of boards are going to try to end on an Appaloosa. Appaloosa will, be sent to the extra deck. They can't negate it, and you get to draw an extra card. So you're still going to plus in that situation. So not a bad card to consider playing. And if I were to cut anything from the deck, when it comes to that, I would probably consider putting this in the side deck and maybe cut the Dogorons. If you really want to keep the Kaijus, I'd probably consider cutting the maybe Talents in like one Dogoron. So that's another card to consider playing. And then for the side deck, Droll Knockbird, Stopping Searching, DD Crow, a good way to be able to hit multiple decks in the format. It's good against Unchained, Pearly, Fire King, Snake Eye decks. Being able to remove your opponent's cards from play is very strong. Dogoron, again, just a good way just to remove any threat your opponent has. But I would probably still stick to using like Kamungus, the Insect Kaiju, if you want to use a Kaiju, because again, post Phantom Nightmare, don't want to be giving them a fire monster with Princess. And then Cosmic Cyclone, really good versus a lot of strategies, even going first and second. Good against Fire King. You can hit the island to blow up their field, the Sanctuary, so they can't do the Exceed Summon on your turn to blow up your field. You can hit the Pearly Happiness, so they can't search. Get rid of Street, so you can target them for Pearly. You can banish Labyrinth cards, so they can't use the graveyard effect of Big Welcome Labyrinth. The card they set off Sinful Spoils when you're using the Black Witch. So there's different ways you can use this to really hurt your opponent. And a really good card that we'll probably see in most decks next format, post Phantom Nightmare. Talents, just a generically good going first or going second card. I think this also makes Zeus more viable in the extra if you are playing Talent. So if you cut this, maybe you consider just cutting Zeus potentially as well, because you can still use it with the Grunix. A lot of times you want to pop the Grunix versus putting it underneath the Zeus. So it kind of depends, but a generically good card to let you look at your opponent's hand. If they hand trap you, play going second by stealing a monster. Really good generic card. And then we have Call by the Grave, just a way to be able to negate a Droll, to be able to negate a Shifter, cards that will really hurt you going first and second, and is also decent in matchups against Fire King going second, because during the draw phase you can banish the Ponyx, so theirs doesn't trigger, or the Kieran, or Barong, so theirs doesn't trigger. I'd probably banish the Barong in a mirror match, because banishing the Ponyx turns off your deck as well, where you can probably get by if not needing the Barong. Okay, so that covers kind of the deck analysis for the Nadir Servant version. Again, the big thing I've seen is that a lot of decks look very similar to this online, but I think the Pot of Prosperity is a much needed inclusion for consistency for this version. Right, so next we will move on to the Tri-Brigade budget version of the deck. Right, so I hope this is really helpful for the deck analysis, just trying to explain how the decks are constructed, theory behind the amount of card rules you're playing, how those work, different tech options, and kind of the synergies for why the cards are in the deck, and things you can swap things out for, and how to think about which cards are good depending on the situation, and why you might alter your deck building based off what you're considering to expect in the format. Again, just remember, deck building isn't necessarily going to be a perfect solution. There could be reasons, again, to play two of a card or one of a card, and they're going to have their trade-offs. And a lot of that is really making reads on what you think is being played and what you're trying to play around. And that is part of a step for becoming a really good player and getting better at deck building, is being able to make those decisions. Again, I hope this was really helpful. If it was, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help, especially making these longer videos. It means a lot, and it's nice to see people are liking the content. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. And if you want to join and become a patron to support the channel because you like the content I'm making, you can find the links in my video description, about page on my YouTube channel, or my website. You can see different things that will come with each of the tiers, as well as each tier having a 7-day free trial to try it out and see if you like it before committing financially. Thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you guys in future videos.